Welcome to the Money Mile Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Waller, and I'm happy you are here. We like to think of Money Mile as standing at the corner of triathlon and personal finance. And we believe that age group triathletes are the lifeblood of our sport, and we like shining the light on some good people doing great things in our sport. I hope this is going to be a valuable conversation to you. Today, we are going to have our Questions on Course segment and a special guest on the show, Mira Panek, a self-proclaimed accidental athlete, but one who has been very successful in her triathlon career. Stick around to hear how Mira has gone from a middle-of-the-pack age grouper competing in sprint and Olympic distance triathlon to successfully finishing Ironman distance races and standing on the podium. After we discuss our questions on course. Please keep in mind that these are for educational purposes only and not financial advice about your individual situation. Related to our guest today, I wanted to highlight a situation I have run into a number of times, but I don't know that I've ever had someone directly ask me the question, and it's a bit of a higher level concept, but I hope you find this is valuable. It is, how can I bring more enjoyment to my financial situation? Normally, there is a situation that presents itself with people who are being pretty frugal and they think they're doing well for themselves and they want to find a better balance between enjoying their finances today and in the future and not ending up on a fast track to the poorhouse. With that as the kind of backdrop for this, I think the first piece that is critical is that you should really be consulting a planner to help confirm that you are either on track or ahead of schedule with your plan before you make major changes from a cash flow perspective. Getting a second opinion on what you have going on can make sure that there aren't any blind spots, and it'll significantly increase your confidence level if you know you're on track and doing the right things. Many times the anxiety that builds up around considering changes like this and dialing up the lifestyle or enjoyment side of money and dialing down savings comes from a fear that if you make changes now, you will run out of money someday later and you'll be regretting that. I recommend that you get a second opinion from someone that you can trust that can give you their honest opinion. Once we have confirmed that you no longer need to pinch every penny or scrimp and save, then you have some capacity that we can work with. It has been quoted several times that income beyond about $70,000 per year does not necessarily increase happiness. And that's due to several studies that have been done in the past. Conceptually, this makes sense, but I think there's a lot more behind the scenes with increasing financial enjoyment. And the first piece of that is increasing that confidence level, like I mentioned before. Now, there are a couple of tactical things that I would recommend. The first set of suggestions that I'll throw out are coming from a book called Happy Money by Elizabeth Dunn and Michael Norton. This book has actually been around a little while. It's about 12 years now at this point. It was published in 2013. I thought it was a fairly decent read and came across with some fairly decent researched academic information, but also brought it home with some fairly straightforward concepts. Their concept here, as far as helping you utilize the same amount of money that you have now, but increasing the happiness out of those resources, is kind of their focus. The first point is buying experiences. Rather than necessarily buying stuff, look at the opportunity to buy an experience, something that you will remember long term and will create emotional dividends down the road. So consider using those same resources to buy experiences rather than things. The second is make it a treat. Now, by making it a treat, it's different if you have the same coffee drink every day before you go into work. It's the same thing. But if you say, hey, I'm going to look at this and maybe I only get it on special occasions, or it's just on Monday mornings or whatever it might be, if you're able to make that a little bit more selective, you make it a treat. You can also make it as a reward. So once you attain something or once you complete a project perhaps or whatever it might be, that's when you get your treat or you get to have your special reward for accomplishing whatever it is. So consider utilizing the same or potentially even fewer or more dollars, but consider making it a treat and a reward for accomplishing something significant rather than just something you do all the time. The third concept here is buying time. This is applicable in a lot of different situations. So if we think about the things that we enjoy and the things we don't enjoy doing, I'll use myself as an example. One of the things that I do not enjoy doing is yard work. It's just not a personal enjoyment thing for me. I know some people really get a big kick out of it. Those that have green thumbs in the audience might really be enjoying that sort of thing. It's just not something that brings me joy. So when we had the opportunity to essentially outsource that to my son to do the yard work, cutting the grass and that sort of thing, I was all for that. I'm happy to pay other people to do those things that I do not enjoy to do. But the kicker there is that it can't just be, hey, it's something that you take off of your plate. What Elizabeth and her co-author suggest is that you actually do something much more specific and purposeful with that time. So if in my case, we would otherwise be mowing the lawn, when that happens, or you take an hour out of your week or whatever it might be, you reinvest that time in something that you do really enjoy. So it's not just it's one less thing off my plate. I'm going to redirect that, have someone else do that task that I don't like doing. But then with that same amount of time, I'm going to then invest or allocate my energy into something that does bring me joy. So if I were to look at that and say, hey, well, I'm not mowing the lawn, but I am going to sit in the backyard in the sun and read a book. That's something that would bring me joy. Or I'm going to go out for a nice run in the morning. Great. Those things will definitely help. But it's pairing those things together and not just outsourcing something, but doing something else with that time that you then free up. That's what will increase the happiness around those resources. The fourth area that they suggest is pay now and consume later. The concept here, I think, is best illustrated by the example of a trip. There can be different scenarios here that can also be fun, but if you said, hey, I'm going to Jamaica next spring for a spring break, just as an example, you have the choice. You could wait until mid-February and book your trip and pay for the fees and do all this stuff. You can do that in February and say, oh yes, we'll be doing this in just a handful of weeks. Another opportunity, and this is where the pay now, consume later comes in, is if you said, hey, I know I'm going to be doing that 10 months from now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pay for that now, assuming you can. You go ahead and pay for it now, and then you consume that resource later on. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to more fully experience the joy of this because you're already committed. You have the funds already committed to that particular thing. You can spend more time enjoying the concept of what you're going to do there. You can do more research and figure out what all your options are. And you will be more emotionally invested in that activity that's months down the line, as opposed to, hey, we're doing a thing in a few months and you don't get the same emotional gravity or the same reward from doing that. So again, the concept there is pay now, consume later, and essentially enjoy those emotional dividends between that time frame. So when you paid to when you're actually consuming or utilizing the resource. The last piece that they recommend in this one is investing in others. So this is an opportunity for you to help support others and the things that they're doing and how they're doing it. Maybe you're investing in their experiences, helping support them, and being able to reap the rewards of that and looking at the benefits that other people receive from money. Now, $100 in your situation might not necessarily be a big difference, but if you take that $100 and redirect that to someone that can really have a big benefit out of that, it is possible that you might have a large degree of enjoyment out of that and helping someone else succeed or helping someone make their life much, much easier, where $100 for you might not be a big deal, but for them, it could be game changing. It could be a significant improvement in their overall situation. So given an opportunity to invest in others, that's one side of things. Also, sharing with others and sharing your time and your resources with other people, again, from that abundance mentality, if you can help make other people's lives better, it will be a better result for you. So I hope that I've summarized or encapsulated the primary points of that book, but I would definitely recommend you, if this is an area of interest for you, take a look at it, look at how to increase your enjoyment around financial aspects in general. So I think, again, Happy Money, the subtitle is The Science of Happier Spending, and they do a great job describing a lot of those key points and getting into more details. I do have 2 additional resources that I wanted to share with you. One concept is from the financial guru or specialist, however you like to refer to him, Ramit Sethi, and he has shared in the past a concept called spending dials. What he's looking at here is, rather than necessarily telling someone they need to spend $17.12 on their utilities or something like that, he looks at your spending plan and the way that you're going about spending money and suggests that you should evaluate the way that you're spending money and consider it a dial that you can dial up or dial down based on how much enjoyment it brings to you in your world. So if it's something that you really enjoy doing, consider dialing up the spending on that. If it's something you really don't like doing, consider dialing down the spending on that. As an example, subscriptions are a very easy one to pick on in this category, where over time, we used to have like cable bills that were atrocious, and now we've got 6 or 7 streaming services that maybe you watch 1 or 2 of them, and you watch one once a year or whatever it might be. So as you're looking at those, you say, well, does that bring me joy? If it does not bring you joy, then dial that down and say, hey, well, let's go back to the one or two that we really use regularly and let's turn the other ones off. However, if you say, oh, you know what, for some in the community, they might say they really like one particular service, and there's a way to level that up. And I'm just, if we use an example or something like that, you might be able to upgrade to a different level of service. So maybe you're not watching commercials anymore, or maybe you have a higher level of access or something like that. So you can say, hey, let's dial down the spending on the things that don't bring us value, but lean into the things that do and that do bring you happiness, and lean into those things. Could also be just a different direction entirely. I'm going to dial down subscriptions and I'm going to dial up maybe a personal trainer or something like that. If you're looking to build your strength and fitness, then maybe dialing up the spending on a personal trainer versus having a bunch of money spent automatically on subscriptions could be a way for you to consider, again, those spending dials. The last concept here, I somewhat caution, or I'm careful about with this. It makes me a little bit nervous that I'm sharing this on the podcast because it is something that I want you to be very careful with. It's a different concept, and I think it applies in this case, but most of the folks that I work with don't necessarily, this could be a detriment to them. So I want to be careful, make sure that you're ready for this, and again, that you're talking with a qualified financial planner before you start to entertain some of these ideas. These ideas in particular are outlined in the book called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. That's a relatively interesting read. The concept that he shares is rather than necessarily leaving significant money for an estate down the road, or whether it be charities or otherwise, that you should be looking at ways to essentially be spending more throughout your lifetime so you can get the enjoyment out of that. If you want to donate more to charities, then you can get them more funds while you're alive and do all that. The challenge here, and I understand that the Die with Zero is a catchy title. However, most folks don't actually want to die with zero. The potential to run out of money is very concerning for most folks. So I would encourage you to at least consider the concept that I refer to as an ideal end state. Rather than necessarily reaching age 90 and having $42 million for charity, you might look at it and say, you know what I really want to do? My ideal end state is that maybe I do have a meaningful inheritance or a meaningful remainder for my spouse or whatever it might be, but it's not $42 million. So maybe I'm targeting, just use an example, say maybe I'm targeting a gross estate of $5 million, so I can leave $2 million to each child and then have a little bit left over for my spouse so I know that they'll be okay. And I feel comfortable with $5 million. Well, otherwise, if you're on track for age 90 to have $10 or $20 million or something like that, you can readjust your spending pattern and your lifestyle between now and call it age 90 to say, rather than just be in an accumulation mode, you can proactively spend down your portfolio within your lifetime. Again, this requires a lot of attention to detail and make sure that you're doing the right thing. So please be careful with that and consult a professional that is familiar with your situation and someone that you trust if you're considering any of those ideas, but can be very helpful to free up additional resources for you to enjoy while you're alive. I know I've covered a lot of ground here. I hope this has been valuable for you. Please keep in mind that these guidelines are different for different folks, and you can get really creative with giving yourself more freedoms to live and enjoy the life that you're living now, rather than necessarily living with your nose to the grindstone for your entire career. But I do highly recommend that you discuss your strategies and your ideas with a competent planner to make sure that the strategies fit in your situation and you don't end up in a situation that you regret down the road. I hope all of that has been valuable for you as some concepts and how to improve your enjoyment around money. Enjoyment overall in your lifestyle can be very helpful and help you live a more satisfying life. Whether you're spending more money or less money can be somewhat irrelevant, but making sure that you're dialing up the enjoyment level of your resources. Now let's turn our attention to Mira Panek. She has gone from a middle of the pack age group triathlete competing in sprint and Olympic distance triathlons to successfully finishing Ironman distance triathlons and standing on the podium, not to mention recently finishing the Boston Marathon with a tremendous PR. So I hope to hear a little bit about that as well today. But Mira Panek, welcome to the Money Mile.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Mira, if we're doing our job correctly, our listeners here are out there somewhere on their long study run. So if it's okay with you, any links or anything like that you want to reference, we'll go ahead and put those in the show notes so they can catch up with those things when we're all done. So could you start us off a little bit and just tell us how you got started and how you got introduced to triathlon?
I was introduced to triathlon by the man who is now my husband. He was at the time in a program for new triathletes. We kind of started hanging out, and he kept inviting me to join him and his triathlete friends to go for a run or go for a swim. And at that time in my life, I had never run a mile. I did not know how to swim. And I had a 20-year-old steel frame mountain bike that was my transportation, my daily driver. So I was not exactly the profile of a triathlete, but I liked him. We kept hanging out, and he was very patient and encouraging with me. And I, slowly started to run and tried to learn how to swim with a lot of instruction and support. And, I just stuck with it. I did my first little mini sprint triathlon, and I just felt so triumphant when I crossed the finish line. It wasn't even a real race. It was just like a little club activity, but I just connected with a part of myself that felt so happy. It just felt like, oh, this is what I meant to do. And so I stuck with it. I was just having such a good time. So that's how I got in. And, I just dabbled. I slowly started doing more competitive events and was really happy with that, just having a super good time for probably the first, I don't know, 10 years of my triathlon career.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so, about how long have you been involved in the triathlon scene?
I think it's been close to 20 years now. I think I did my first triathlon in 2006,
Okay, so pretty close there.
almost 20 years. Yeah.
I guess the $64,000 question there is your husband still involved with triathlon?
Yes, he
Yes.
is.
Okay, wonderful. So the dynamic duo, you were able
Yeah,
to.
he's got, I think, a double digit number of Ironmans under his belt at this point. So, yeah,
Oh, right on.
we're both still in the sport.
You're very good. So after roughly 20 years of doing this, I've found that success means different things to different people and sometimes at different times in their careers. So how are you defining success these days?
Yeah, success for me, I think it involves a number of factors. It's not just one thing, but certainly when it comes to racing, for me, success means giving it my very best effort, feeling like I execute my race plan really well. I would say rising to the challenge because on race day, something weird always happens. You don't know what it's going to be. You can count on the fact that it will. Rolling with that and keeping a positive mindset. A big part of success for me is just enjoyment, having fun. Like it's really important for me that this is my hobby. I want to have a good time. And so a successful day, of training or racing for me is one that has some joy in it.
Oh, that is wonderful. And I love the perspective there. I would agree with you. Something is going to go not according to plan on race day, and your ability to adapt to that and be able to persevere and have a good time with it and continue to persist. I think your outlook on triathlon and how you're approaching it drives a lot of whether or not you're able to enjoy that experience, regardless of what happens. At least for us age groupers. I know that at the
Yeah.
professional level, if that's how you're putting food on your table, like you've got to be on the A game. This
Yeah.
thing's got to work out just perfectly. But for most of us age groupers, it's like, hey, this is our hobby. This is not how we're putting food on the table. So let's go out and have fun with it. If you're just beating yourself up all day and angry about the whole thing, what's the point?
What's the point? Yeah. I don't usually have any prize money on the line. I've had races where you hit a bump and all your hydration goes flying, and it's like, well, do you stop and pick it up or you just improvise? Probably one of my biggest, I don't want to call it a failure, but errors like in a race, I just missed a turn on the bike, and it took me forever to figure it out. And so I added 12 miles to the race course. When I finally figured it out, I was like, I don't really know what to do here. I don't have a map. I don't have a phone. Maybe I'll just turn around and retrace my steps until I start seeing bicycles. And that's what I did. And when I got back on the course, my thought was, well, my day's not over. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my bike. I can finish this race. I'm going to be slower than I thought, but why not? And so I ended up winning my age group
You won your age group with 12 bonus miles
with
included?
12 bonus miles. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So if we think about that for a moment, we think about I would definitely attribute at least a piece of that would go to your outlook on that and looking forward and trying to have a positive experience with that. Many people could have just said, "Oh, forget it. Maybe I'll make it back to transition. Maybe I'll call a cab." whatever, my day's over because I made a mistake. And mistakes happen. But due to your outlook and your perspective, like, well, hey, I'm not broken. My bike's not broken. Let's get back to work. Let's keep going.
Right.
And you get
Yeah.
a little extra adventure race and a nice story to throw in with that on top of winning your age group at that particular race. So kudos to you. That's just a wonderful testament to your perspective on the sport. I know that triathlon can be an expensive hobby, and obviously, with the money mile being at the intersection between triathlon and personal finance, what tips or suggestions do you have for other triathletes trying to make sure that they're getting the best bang for their buck?
Yeah, I think especially for a new triathlete, it's a pretty gear intensive sport. I was talking to a coach one time and she was lamenting how whenever she takes on a new athlete, she's feel kind of cringy, like, well, here's your $10,000 shopping list. Yeah, I didn't start that way. I eased into the sport. And I think one of the things I did that helped was I just kind of geared up incrementally. I bought used gear off other triathletes who had upgraded, but it was still in good condition. I shopped sales. I'm kind of an unusual size. And I, at one point, found two wetsuits, a full sleeve and a Farmer John, on a sale rack. And the store sold me both wetsuits for $45. They're brand new, but they were a few years old because they just didn't get a lot of customers my size. So I got lucky with things like that. And then I've always raced with a team or a club, and usually they negotiate discounts with sponsors, sponsor merchants. And so I try to shop with the sponsor stores and get the discounts on gear that way. When we've had to travel for races where we needed to ship our bikes, we didn't have bike boxes at first, so we'd borrow from our teammates. We just tried to do things, the we is me and my husband, because we're both in the sport. But, that was kind of our approach. You can spend a boatload of money on gadgets and gear if you want to, but I slowly kind of built up my repertoire of gear. And like I said, just tried to be economical about where I invested. And there were certainly seasons where, yeah, I spent a lot on race registrations and I set a budget for that. And it's like, well, that's all you're doing this year, right? That's something else I can say about getting the bang for your buck. You don't have to race the big name races. Like we have a wonderful series here in the area where I live called the Kinetic series, and they put on races in Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, and I think Pennsylvania. And they're mostly sprint and Olympics. They do some long course, but they've been doing it for a really long time. It's super well organized. It's really well run. They're really fun. You can usually drive in the morning of, so you don't have airfare or lodging or anything like that. I did a lot of racing with that series last year, and I got to race a ton. I had so much fun, and I didn't really have to spend all that much money. And so I think, if you're in the sport a while and you want to do a big branded race somewhere exciting, like, yeah, go for it. But you can get a lot of enjoyment out of your racing dollar if you just stick to like local events. I think that was something that was good value for me as well.
Yeah, that's great. And the shorter distance races, you get to race a lot more frequently if you're doing
Yeah.
that. If you're trying to say, hey, I'm going to fly across the country and do a race on the other side of the country, that's going to be a lot more expensive. But you could race every month or every couple of weeks if you're doing shorter distance stuff and it's more local. You get a lot more experience, get to meet more people in the community,
Yeah.
tons of benefits from the smaller local races. So I fully support that as well. And it sounds like you're also really leveraging the groups that you're with as well and being opportunistic, looking for the buys, whether it be a discount through the club or some used gear from somebody else or doing something else. You had some great tips in there. So I appreciate you sharing your insights there. You've come off a couple of great years in this sport. And if I've got this right, you also have age group podium finishes at Eagleman 70.3 and Ironman Lake Placid and a top 25% age group finish in Kona in 2023, along with another great finish at Eagleman 70.3 in 2024, which was first in your age group, a 10th
Mhm.
place age group finish at USAT National and Olympic Triathlon, Olympic distance triathlon, and a couple more first place age group finishes in the Waterman half try, the Diamond in the Rough Olympic try in 2024. You are a busy lady.
Yeah.
How do you plan on carrying this momentum with you into 2025 and into the future? Do you have a race for this year? Or what are you most looking forward to?
I did Kona in 2023. That was obviously a huge goal and a dream come true to make it there and then to be able to do the race and finish. After that, I was like, well, what's next? And I talked with my coach about, what would be a worthy goal for 2024. And we decided I would try to win the Kinetic Cup. I was talking about all these local races, and they have a program like if you race at least 5 of the races in the series, you earn points, right? And you can win the Kinetic Cup. I set the goal for that, and I ended up winning the cup for my age group. The Eagleman win was a complete surprise. Like I came out of the water, I don't know, 27th. I had a terrible swim. At that point, I was like, well, just give it your best effort. I rode a solid bike. It wasn't my fastest. And then I put in a solid run and I ended up winning. It was another one of those experiences where, like, don't get in your head, right? About the one thing that goes sideways on race day. So, yeah, I got to race a lot last year and had a really, really good season. And so, after all that, I had another conversation with my coach about, well, what's next? For 2025, I set a goal to run the Boston Marathon, and I had never done that race before. So, I did an early season race in 2024 to try to qualify. And I picked a very friendly course that started in Ojai, California, and was a gentle downhill run all the way to the Pacific Ocean and finished in Ventura. So I got a nice quick time and got my BQ time, and then applied for and was accepted to Boston and had the privilege of running that in April and had the run of my life. It was a great day.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. I know for a long time, for me, even just attaining a Boston qualifying time is a tremendous accomplishment. So,
Yeah.
if I understand this correctly, you had the goal earlier for this year. So, we're recording this in mid-May 2025. But earlier this year, you ran the qualifying time.
No, the qualifying race was in February of 24.
Ah, so you had a lot more time. Okay, I was thinking that was really compressed.
Yeah.
So you qualified last year and then ran just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. So I realized I had gotten into the Boston Marathon. I guess it was around the beginning of October last year. My coach and I put together a very thorough 20-week training plan. I'm a very compliant coachee. I think he enjoys working with me because I just do what I'm told. But, I worked the plan. I was really well prepared physically.
Okay.
I was really well prepared mentally. I had 2 goals for Boston, and one was to finish, and the other was to enjoy the day. I heard so many things about what a wonderful course it is in terms of crowd support, and it did not disappoint. Like I don't think there wasn't more than a quarter mile anywhere where there weren't just screaming fans out there cheering you on. It was so much fun, and we had really nice weather. Everything just stacked up, and I think I was so relaxed and so grateful and happy to be there that I had a tremendous run, and I ended up setting a 13 plus minute PR kind of without trying. I felt like I was holding back. I didn't want to overdo it because a lot of people start out too fast at Boston. It's downhill at the beginning, and I was really trying to be conservative, but I just ran really good pacing. I was nice and steady for the whole race. It's still a tough day, right? I mean, I had a great time, but a marathon is no joke. That's a day's work, and everything hurt at the finish line, but I was really, really happy.
Coming in with a 13-minute PR at Boston, that's so impressive. Kudos to you.
Thank you.
So you mentioned the build cycle that you had for Boston. That was 20 weeks that your coach put together for you?
Yeah.
That's a meaningful build period for, well, just for, I was about to say just a marathon, but this is Boston that we're talking about here. But a lot of people look at the 20-week cycle as, training for an iron distance triathlon, not solely the marathon portion of that. So is that timeline, is that in alignment with your other training protocols, like working up that long for a major event?
Um, Boy, I couldn't tell you. I think
You just do what your coach tells you, and
I
which
just
is
do what I'm
fantastic.
told.
Yeah, hey.
Obviously, training for Lake Placid, there was a significant build for that. And there was a lot of sort of course specific training, like a lot of climbing on the bike
Mhm.
and a lot of long swims and getting ready for Kona. There was a build for that. I trust my coach completely. Like he's never done me wrong. I just always show up peaking on race day. It's just predictable. I trust that there's a method to the madness, and that's what I pay him for. Like he knows what he's doing, and I just do what I'm told, and it works out.
Oh, that's wonderful. And a testament to coaching in general. I think most of the athletes that I've had on the Money Mile podcast have had coaching at least at some level and speak very highly of it. So you found a pretty decent coach in this. Do you know if your coach is actively interviewing for new clients? Is that something like we can share his contact information with the community here? He's
I,
obviously doing pretty decent work for you.
yeah. My coach and his wife, they're both coaches and they have a little coaching practice, right, that they do together. And it's not their full-time job for either of them, right? It's kind of
Okay.
their side hustle. And so I think, they probably have a roster of 30 or 40 athletes that's pretty stable. And
Okay.
I don't know that they're looking to grow that, but
Okay.
I got a coach at first when I decided I wanted to try to run an Ironman. And I was like, yeah, I should probably not take this on my own. And that was sort of my inspiration to hire a coach. And I worked with a coach to get ready for my first Ironman, and it was a great experience. And stayed with that coach for a few years until he retired from coaching. And then ended up with the coach I have now after that. They've both just been exactly what I needed at the right time. Like they're different in their approaches, but it was the perfect match for where I was in my triathlon career. And I really think that the coach I have now, he knows just how to push me without being pushy. Like there's just the right amount of challenge. He knows that I'm really committed to having fun, that if I'm not having fun, I'm out.
Yeah.
And that, if this starts to feel like toil, I'm not in the game. And
Okay.
it's just been the perfect balance that's allowed me to really discover the competitor that I never knew I was. I'm as surprised as anybody else, but I think that it's, probably a combination of natural talent, but also really, really smart preparation. And having a coach has helped me do that.
What would you consider to be the most underrated aspect of triathlons or something you think that more triathletes should know about?
Hmm. I don't know if it's something more triathletes should know about, but I think there's sort of a mystique about the sport from the spectator side that it's very solitary and it's very, you see all these stories of pain and suffering and people staggering across the finish line and, collapsing at the finish line, and that it has to be this sort of it's like the story of the marathon, like in ancient Greece, what happened to that guy at the finish? Well, he dropped dead. It's that kind of suffering and sacrifice that goes into it. And my experience in the sport has not been that way at all. Like for me, it's just been very social. It's been very playful. It's been very fun. Yes, there's work involved. Yes, it takes effort, but if it didn't, it wouldn't matter. That's why it's rewarding, is because it's challenging. But I've always managed to bring a very fun and playful approach to it. And I once saw like a sticker or something that says, nobody ever says, let's go play triathlon. And I was like, well, why not? So I think there can be this perception that the sport it's all work and no play. And that hasn't been my experience. I've always been in a club or on a team, and I've had pals that I can go and ride with and run with, and even at times hit the pool with. And what's really fun is like when we travel together for a race, and rent a team house and you all hang out and make dinner. And after the race, you hang out and talk triathlon all day and people don't get tired of it. So I just think that like I've had a whole lot of fun and it's been a really playful experience. And that was important. When I was really young, I participated in a sport that felt very much like you were training and you were competing and you were serious and you had to win. And that very quickly sucked all the joy out of the experience. And so to be able to have a different kind of relationship with sport it's been kind of healing for me, but it's also just been really fun.
Oh, that's great. I love your interest in keeping fun in the sport. And as you said, with your coach knows you. Hey, if he gives you something that's not going to be fun, you're not going to want to do it. So
Yeah.
keeping it fun, keeping it light. In addition to that, it also seems as though it's providing tremendous benefit for you to keep it fun, keep it active. A 13-minute PR at Boston. Still kind of in disbelief about that, but you're having fun with it and you're getting great results. So it's not as
Yeah.
though you have to grind yourself to the nubbins in the pain cave every day in order to get good results. You're having fun and getting good results, which I think is wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I would want people to know.
Is there anything else that you would like for the community to know about your journey?
Just that it kind of happened by accident. I got started kind of late. I learned how to swim when I was 38. And so that has been a ongoing challenge as a what they call an adult onset swimmer. I think that kids that learn to swim when they're little, just there's some sort of embodied wisdom about that that's really hard to grasp as an adult. It's kind of surprising to me that I've stuck with that as long as I have, because like most people, I enjoy doing things that I'm good at. And when something is hard, I only have so much patience with it and I lose interest, but somehow I've managed to hang in there. I keep going to the pool and I keep trying, and it's still not my strength for sure. But like I said, you just put in the time and give it your best effort and, try to enjoy it for what it is. My journey is just, it's been surprising and delightful and kind of unexpected. What's nice about that for me is that having this area of my life that just brings me so much enjoyment. I think it's one of those things where I have a lot of control over it. Like I choose to do the training, I choose what mindset to bring to it, I choose what races I want to do. I have a lot of agency over kind of designing what that looks like. And it's not that way in a lot of other areas of life. When you go to work, there's kind of someone telling you what you need to do. And there's a lot of factors beyond your control, and you don't always get the success that you want. And it's just nice to have like a territory of life where it's just been so rewarding and such a positive outlet for me.
Oh, that's wonderful. And it sounds like you've also had good coaching along the way to help support you in that endeavor. So you're not recreating the wheel or trying to figure all this stuff out. You don't have a tyrannical overlord making you do workouts every day, but a collaborative relationship with somebody that knows you and is able to help support you in having fun and training well. It sounds like all the pieces have come together well
Yeah.
for you. And I'm so happy to hear that everything's continuing to work well. There is one other aspect of triathlon that you had mentioned before we started the recording part of this. I was hoping you'd share with our audience a little bit more about some of the volunteer work that you're doing within triathlon these days.
Yeah. I found out about this volunteer organization, I guess it was around Christmas time last year through a triathlon club that I'm in now. And there was a woman who had started a after school program for high school age kids to introduce them to the sport of triathlon. And she was looking for volunteer coaches to help with the program. And I thought I'd actually been looking for a volunteer opportunity and was, trying to find something that felt like a good fit for me. And I was like, oh, well, this is a no-brainer. So I connected with her and her organization, and it's called, I think the name of the organization is Fit to Be Kids, and the program is called Tri Game Sports. I think it's modeled after, I forget what they call this style of triathlon, but it's all indoor racing where they run on treadmills and ride on stationary bikes and swim in a pool. We run the program at our local Olympic Swim Center. What's so great about it is that it eliminates that barrier to entry to the sport from all the cost of the gear and the coaching and everything else. Like all of that is provided for the kids through the program. And so we bring the bikes, we bring the trainers, we bring anything they need for the pool. We have the facility for them. We provide their kits, their racing kits, and obviously all the coaching. And so the kids just show up. We have them ride on trainers, swim in the pool, and then run outdoors. And we just did our first race event of the year about 2 weeks ago. And it's just been so much fun. It's just so inspiring to watch the kids. The teenage years can kind of be a vulnerable time in one's life. And it's just nice to be there to coach them and support them in something that has such a empowering effect on a young person and see them achieve their goals. So yeah, I've only been doing it just this year, but I'm probably going to continue because I'm really enjoying it.
Well, that is wonderful. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but we actually had Christina Dorer on the
She's the
podcast
one. Yeah.
back in episode 53, the executive
Yeah.
director of Tri Games Sports. when we were talking earlier, you were sharing about this great volunteer work that you're doing. I was like, oh, that sounds great. I want to hear more about it. And as soon as you mentioned Tri Game Sports, like, oh, wait, I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah, I talked with someone else about that. I know that Christina was super excited about the program that she was pulling together. And now she has volunteer coaches that are also super excited about supporting the next generation of triathletes and giving back to the sport, which I think is wonderful. So I very much appreciate you doing that. Next time you see Christina, please tell her I said hello. But otherwise, please keep up the great work with all of that. And I'll look forward to hearing more about how the whole Fit to Be Kids and Tri Game Sports program unfolds over time. Well, Mira, I very much appreciate your time. And I know that we're kind of coming to the end of our conversation here. Is there anything else that you would like for our community to know about you or your journey, or any way that you'd like for them to, if they found a lot of value out of the conversation here, ways that you would like for them to connect with you, anything like that?
I think if people are inspired by the Fit to Be Kids, I would say look into that organization. I think Christina's done an amazing job of garnering sponsorship for that and keeping the program going. And so I think that's something I would encourage people to check out. It's a great program. But yeah, that's about it.
Mira, I really appreciate you sharing a bit of your experience and the joy that you get out of triathlon. Really has been an inspiration to me and a bit invigorating in looking at the way that I approach my training. So I appreciate you sharing all of that. We will also be including in the show notes links to Fit to Be Kids, Tri Game Sports. And if that sounds familiar to you, it might also be because we had Christina Dorer on the podcast a number of months ago. She was back in episode 52, actually. So hopefully that was a good refresher to the Tri Game Sports program. I highly recommend you check that out. We'll have links to that. We'll have links to Mira's Instagram and also an article from 2017 about some of the experiences that she's had. So I do hope that this segment and this episode of Money Mile was valuable for you. If it was, please share the podcast with your training buddies and friends. Keep in mind that if you work out, everything else will too. And we'll look forward to talking with you next time on Money Mile.